They left no bodies, no shell casings, no boot prints in the dust outside the compound walls. The first sign that anything had happened at all was silence. 42 men ran a network in this city, 42 men who had survived drone coverage, signals intercept, informant networks, and every tool of the most expensive intelligence apparatus ever assembled. By the time the city woke up, they were gone. Not pushed to another district, not warned and dispersed. Gone. And the unit that removed them has never appeared in any official Department of Defense record bearing a name the Pentagon has formally acknowledged. This is the account of what the records don't show, and why the men who did it moved the way they did, like they were never there at all. But before we get to the operation itself, you need to understand something about how these men were built, because what happened to those 42 targets cannot be explained without first understanding the system that produced the people who removed them. A system so demanding that most of the people who attempt it never come close to finishing it, and the ones who do finish it are changed by it in ways that take years to fully understand. Iraq in 2004 and 2005 was not simply unstable. It was a functioning catastrophe, wearing the appearance of a managed war. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was executing between 40 and 60 vehicle-borne IED attacks every single month. In Baghdad alone, death squads were depositing between 40 and 60 tortured bodies on the streets every night. Every night. The United States had deployed 160,000 personnel supported by the most sophisticated intelligence system in human history. Satellite coverage, signals intercept, drone feeds running 24 hours a day. And they were losing, not for lack of resources, not for lack of intelligence. The problem was a single word: speed. The gap between identifying a target and reaching that target's door was still measured in hours, and hours meant the target was gone. Into this problem, the Joint Special Operations Command inserted a capability that the Pentagon's public posture has never formally confirmed: Task Force Green, Delta Force. The unit whose existence the Department of Defense acknowledged only because a Freedom of Information request in 1984 made continued denial legally untenable. And before you can understand what they did to those 42 men, you need to understand what it took to become one of them. Delta Force selection begins with a premise so simple it sounds almost reasonable. Can you navigate alone across mountainous terrain in any weather carrying a load that would stop most competitive athletes? Not once, not twice, day after day after day until the answer becomes clear. Candidates arrive from across the American military: Rangers, Green Berets, Marine Raiders, infantry officers, men who have already proven themselves in the most demanding conventional military environments the Army produces. And the selection process treats their previous achievements as irrelevant, because the selection is not testing what they have done. It is testing what they are made of when everything they have done stops being enough. The loaded marches that define Delta selection have been described by former participants including Eric Haney, whose memoir remains the most detailed first-person account of the process. Candidates carry between 45 and 60 pounds across distances that have been reported at between 18 and 40 miles, with time limits that are not published in advance. Navigation by map and compass only, no GPS, no trail to follow, no candidate ahead of you whose footprints you can track, and no information about whether you are performing well or poorly. The directing staff record your arrival time. If you arrived within the limit, they give you the next checkpoint location, and they watch you walk back into the dark. If you didn't arrive within the limit, you are done. No appeal, no second chance, no acknowledgement of how close you came. But the marches are only half the story, because the physical selection produces the operator. What happens in the killing house produces the weapon. And what Delta Force operators do in the killing house is something that most people, even within the special operations community, have never seen. 5,000 rounds, minimum, fired in live ammunition scenarios against targets representing hostages and terrorists at ranges measured in feet. Not yards, feet, until the process of entering a room, identifying every threat, and engaging each one with aimed shots to the head and torso takes less time than it takes to describe. Former Delta training cadre speaking anonymously described the objective in terms that explain everything that happened at 73 Easting and everything that happened in every compound in Iraq. An automatic man doesn't decide to shoot. He has already shot. That is what the 42 men in that Iraqi network were facing, and they didn't know it. Finding 42 specific human beings inside an Iraqi city is not solved by more drones, not by more signals intercept. It is solved by understanding how a network functions well enough to predict where its members will be before they have decided where they are going. The intelligence architecture supporting Task Force Green was a hybrid system. American technical collection capabilities married to something technical collection cannot replicate: human understanding, Arabic-speaking intelligence officers with experience running agent networks in hostile urban environments. They had been developing sources in Iraq since before the 2003 invasion. Their agents were not technical assets. They were people, shopkeepers, taxi drivers, tribal elders, people who understood the social geography of Baghdad's neighborhoods in a way that no satellite or drone could produce. An American intelligence officer who worked alongside Task Force Green later described the British approach in terms that apply equally to the American methodology at its best. They'd come in with a name and a neighborhood. We'd say that's not enough. They'd say, watch. 48 hours later, they'd have a grid reference, a pattern of life, and a window. We'd still be processing the initial intelligence packet. The network had 42 members across 4 tiers: outer ring facilitators, mid-level coordinators, technical specialists, and at the core, the leadership. Task Force Green mapped every connection, every safe house, every communication pattern, and then they built a targeting sequence designed to work from the outside in, starting at the periphery where targets were accessible, moving inward toward the core as the intelligence from each capture fed the next package. The cycle was self-accelerating. Every raid produced intelligence, every piece of intelligence produced a new target, and every new target was gone before the network understood what was happening to it. What happened next across 12 weeks in the streets of Baghdad has never appeared in any official record, but it has been reconstructed from declassified fragments, intelligence officer accounts, and the operational logic of a targeting cycle that produced a result so complete that an American general described it in terms that represented a total reversal of the original Pentagon assessment. Here is what that result looked like from the inside. They moved in civilian vehicles, unmarked, the right make and model for the neighborhood, the right level of wear, the right license plates. Former Delta operator Brad Nagel described the discipline of the approach in terms that reveal why they were never detected before they reached the door. You drive like you live there, not too fast, not too slow, not looking at the building you're about to breach, looking at everything except the building you're about to breach. Because the thing that gets you killed before you reach the door isn't the man inside the door. It's the teenager on the corner who notices that the car slowed down wrong. The surveillance element had been in position for between 24 and 72 hours before the assault team moved, sometimes longer, in temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit, without movement, without noise, sometimes within meters of individuals who would have killed them on sight. They confirmed the target was present, confirmed the number of armed personnel, confirmed the exits, and communicated everything in real-time encrypted communications connecting every operator on the mission to every other operator simultaneously. When the confirmation came, the vehicles moved. The breach charge is placed. The entry team is stacked. 4 operators, point man for the doorway. Number 2 as the primary engagement operator. 3 and 4 clearing laterally. 1 left, 1 right. Each man's arc of fire is absolute, not agreed on in that moment, decided in the killing house 2 years earlier, and rehearsed until deviation became physically impossible. The charge detonates. The door is gone. The point man crosses the threshold. Number 2 is inside the room before the dust from the breach has traveled 2 feet. 3 and 4 clear laterally. The room is declared. The next room, the next. The building is clear. In less time than it took you to read that paragraph. Here is the detail that most accounts of special operations raids leave out entirely. The kinetic phase, the breach and clear, was not the most important part of the operation. The most important part happened after the shooting stopped. Within seconds of the last room being cleared, designated operators began the exploitation. Every phone, every laptop, every USB drive, every document, catalogued and extracted. A single phone recovered from a mid-level facilitator could contain the contact information of every person in that facilitator's network going back months. An intelligence specialist assigned to the Task Force Green Fusion Cell described what happened next. We were producing actionable intelligence from a recovered phone within 60 to 90 minutes of the raid. On multiple occasions, we had a new target package ready before the team had finished debriefing the previous hit. There were nights where the same assault element hit 3 different compounds, each operation made possible by intelligence recovered in the one before it. The enemy's security was designed for intelligence cycles measured in days. We were running one measured in minutes. They had no answer for it. The first 3 weeks targeted the outer ring, 14 facilitators, taken off the network in a sequence designed so the tiers above them couldn't be certain whether the missing individuals had been captured or had simply gone to ground. The ambiguity was deliberate. A network that knows it is being systematically targeted will take countermeasures. A network that can't determine whether it has a problem will keep operating. And a network that keeps operating keeps producing the signatures that fuel the targeting cycle. 8 of the 14 were captured alive. 2 of them provided specific intelligence on the safe houses used by the second tier, not under duress, under the weight of their own phones, confronted with a record of their own communications more complete than their own memory. The decision to cooperate was, in the language of the post-mission assessment, not difficult to facilitate. Weeks 4 through 7 targeted the middle tier, harder targets, better operational security, more frequent location changes. But the intelligence snowball was already rolling, and by the end of week 6, the network diagram was detailed enough that analysts could predict which safe houses would be used on which nights, based on the patterns of previous movements. Weeks 7 through 12. The core. The core targets knew they were being hunted. Some had moved 17 times in 11 weeks. Some had cut off all electronic communication. Some had rigged their safe houses with IEDs designed to kill any entry team that breached the door. On one such operation, a 4-man entry team breached a compound in the Amira district and triggered a command wire device concealed behind the interior wall. 5 kilograms of homemade explosive, less than 2 meters from the lead operator. The blast threw him back through the doorway. His ceramic armor absorbed the fragmentation, perforated eardrum, lacerations, concussion. He was back on the targeting roster within 96 hours. The 3 remaining operators continued the clearance. 2 armed insurgents killed in the ground floor rooms. The primary target, one of the network's senior bomb makers, captured as he attempted to exit through a rear window. His phone contained direct communications to the network's operational commander. That phone produced the final targeting package. The last target was taken on the final night of the campaign. He had survived 11 weeks of systematic dismantlement. He had moved 17 times. He had gone dark on all communications. He had used only face-to-face meetings with a single courier. The courier had been under surveillance for 9 days. He led Task Force Green to the last address. 42 individuals had comprised the network when the campaign began. 31 were captured and transferred to detention. 9 were killed during raids when they engaged operators with firearms or explosive devices. 2 fled the area of operations in the final weeks. The network ceased to exist as a functional organization. The specific attack category it had been responsible for dropped by 71% in the 45 days following the campaign's conclusion. An American general officer whose area of responsibility included the targeted district described the result in a communication later referenced in a partially declassified joint assessment. 42 men ran a network in this district for 14 months. We could not stop them with a brigade. They are gone. I do not have a name to put in the report for what removed them. I have only the result. But here is what that result cost. And this is the part of the story that almost never gets told, because the part that almost never gets told is the part that explains why the achievement actually matters. 3 operators assigned to Task Force Green were wounded during the 12-week campaign. 1 was medically evacuated from theater for injuries, requiring surgery not available at the operating base. He returned to the unit 8 months later. The sustained tempo, 4 to 6 direct action operations per night across the broader task force schedule, produced a cumulative physical burden that the human body was not designed to absorb indefinitely. Stress fractures, joint degeneration, spinal compression injuries. The mechanical consequence of carrying 30 to 45 kilograms of kit through explosive physical activity multiple times per night for months. But beneath the physical accounting is the one that doesn't have a diagnostic code, the one that doesn't appear in medical records, the specific psychological weight of going through a door in the dark every night for weeks and months, doing what the training prepared you to do, doing it correctly, coming back to base, debriefing, reading the next target package, going back out. A senior non-commissioned officer who served through the heaviest operational period described the reality later. We were effective because we didn't stop. The enemy couldn't recover because we hit them every night, but neither could we. There were operators on their third and fourth rotations carrying injuries that in peacetime would have ended their careers. They stayed because the man next to them hadn't left. That's the honest answer. Not tactics, not technology, not doctrine. The man next to them hadn't left. The principle this campaign demonstrated is not new. A small number of precisely selected, relentlessly trained, operationally experienced individuals given accurate intelligence and authority to act can achieve effects that are structurally unavailable to a larger conventionally organized force, not because the larger force lacks courage, because the larger force announces itself, its size, its vehicles, its communications traffic, its logistical footprint. The announcement gives the enemy the one resource they need above all others: time. Time to move, time to disperse, time to warn the tier above them, time to survive the night. The ghost doesn't announce itself. The ghost is already in the room. 42 men ran a network. They adapted to everything the most sophisticated counterterrorism apparatus ever deployed could produce. They did not adapt to operators who moved like they were never there, who arrived in vehicles that belonged on the street, who breached doors before the man inside had finished deciding whether the sound he heard was a threat, who were gone before the neighborhood understood that something had happened, who left nothing behind them. No shell casings, no boot prints, no official record in any document bearing a unit name the Pentagon has ever publicly confirmed. Only the silence. The specific, unmistakable silence of a network that was operating at full capacity on one day and was simply no longer there the next. That is what Delta Force is. That is what the selection produces. That is what the training builds. Men who walk like ghosts and leave 42 empty spaces where a network used to be. The operation has no official name, no public record, no Pentagon press release. It has only the outcome and the silence that followed it, which is exactly how they intended it.